Hello on the Daily Family. Welcome back to the show. In today's episode, I'm talking about the collective energy. And the reason for this is because we're obviously in an eclipse season, and Pisces energy is very strong. Virgo energy is very strong because we're kind of in this eclipse season on this Pisces Virgo axis. And so it's making people feel some type of way. And I want to really draw awareness to it because this is where knowing about the collective frequency, like knowing about astrology, knowing about these things can really benefit you in your life, because otherwise you get into these cycles of, oh my gosh, I'm unmotivated, or oh, I'm so tired, or oh, why does everything feel like it's so hard right now? And it doesn't have to feel like that. And so in this episode, I'm really going to go in and explain collective energy and how you can use it to your advantage, but also not allow it to become a problem. So let's dive in. As you may know, my current program, which is my October money program, it's called Money Boo Thang, and it is a money mindset mini program. So mini program basically means that it's not going to take you hours and hours and hours to finish. It is podcast style, so you can listen to it. It's kind of like a secret podcast. You can listen to it in the car, you can listen to it whenever, but it is all within the intention of helping you heal the relationship you have with money. And there's a lot of people that'll be like, oh, I know my relationship's bad with money, or I'll hear people be like, I'm so bad with money, but I'm working on it. And I don't think we realize that the way that you speak about money is so important, because it can really affect your energetic frequency, which will make you a better or a worse conduit to receive and attract more money. So healing your money energy, healing the relationship you have with your finances, really getting some strategy in place to be able to do that. Very, 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 very important. And Money Boo Thang is truly that. So there is energetics talk about how to become neutral with money and your finances. Also, where to look at your astrology and where to look at your human design for how you can kind of utilize that money energy within your body. So everybody kind of attracts money differently depending on their human design and depending on their astrology. And I talk about that in the course. Also, you're going to get a lesson on running your business according to the lunar cycle. Again, this goes very much with this episode today about collective energy, but the moon really does play a part in people's buying patterns. It plays a part in how we feel about ourselves, and how we feel about ourselves will directly reflect how well we can attract the feeling that money gives us, which is freedom and peace and joy and strength and all these things. And then finally, I'm also going to teach you strategically how to build passive income in your business so that you can remain neutral to money coming in, money going out. So if money is a hot topic for you, or something that you avoid like the plague, then Money Boo Thang is for you. You can click the link in our show notes, or you can come to my Instagram, DM me the word money. It's Danielle _ on the daily, and I'll send you the link to book or to snag it for yourself. It is available immediately because it's podcast style. So you don't have to wait months to get it. As soon as you buy it, you get access to it. And it is currently $129. That price will go up to $199 next week. So you want to make sure that if healing the relationship you have with your finances is something that you are focused on, then you really need to get into this course. All right, let's get into this episode. Last week, there was a really horrible hurricane in Florida. And that was the second horrible hurricane in Florida in only a couple weeks. First, we had Helene, and then there was another one that came through last week called Milton, Hurricane Milton. And I think anywhere you are in the US, you felt it. And everyone that I talked to that day would say the energy just feels off. Everything feels heavy. Something feels different about this one. And I felt it as well. And in fact, the day that hurricane was happening, I probably absorbed all of the anxiety for all of Florida. And I don't normally do that. That's something that I am usually very good at, staying in my own energy and really making sure that I am connected to my own frequency. That is something that I am normally very, very good at. But I was not last week. Full transparency. I absorbed a lot of fear. I absorbed a lot of panic. I absorbed a lot of just worry in general and mistrust. And the whole day I had anxiety. The whole day I was emotional. So a lesson learned there. And, I look back into like what's currently happening astrologically. And for me personally, it is, for all of us, it's Libra season. Libra rules my 12th house. 12th house is all about spirituality, subconscious mind, fears from the past kind of coming back up. And so it's also like where energetic and spiritual upgrades happen. So my like spiritual portal is very open right now. And I've been receiving a lot of channeled messages, particularly through tarot, just messages for myself, messages for people close to me. I've just been receiving a lot of downloads. And so that day that Hurricane Milton came through, I was so, I was so affected by it and learned a lot of really important lessons, which is great. Now, that's not the case for everybody. Like depending on where, Libra sits, you're going to be affected differently this month. But for me, that's how I was affected. So I know that that's why I was so, I was absorbing so many things. Now, on a collective level, the reason why I think most people that I spoke to felt particularly heavy, right? There is a collective trauma happening right now. And I think it's global. It's not just in the US. In the US, we have a lot of collective traumas and fears. So there's the election coming up. There's a bunch of wildfires in the Northwest. There's hurricanes constantly coming through Florida in the South. And, there's also this air of mistrust, right? On both sides of the political aisle. There's a lot of, a lot of conservative people that feel like the government is out to get them, and a lot of conspiracy theories, which could be true. Who knows? Like, I love a conspiracy theory just as much as the next person, but how far you allow yourself to be swept away by it is important. And when there's also this thing where there was a time where we couldn't just live stream horrific events like Category 5 hurricanes, right? Like we couldn't live stream that. And essentially now with social media and TikTok, we can live stream it. Like we can constantly refresh our feed. And the more we refresh our feed and we look at those things, the more the algorithm is going to send us that type of content. And so it was very easy. It's very easy now when there's like national global issues. So also, everything that's been happening in the Middle East between Israel and Gaza and like Ukraine and, all of these things that are just creating this collective trauma that we are all hyper focused on. It's going to make the collective frequency feel heavier. It's going to affect us differently. And it's really important. This is where like the light workers, the people that are here to shift the frequency of the planet into a new paradigm, it is so important that you keep your shields up energetically. It is so important that we all, I put myself in this pile. Like it is so important that we keep our shields up. It's so important that we focus on light because like light is what prevails. Darkness does not prevail. So even though there might be all these things like happening around us that are feeling very dark, very ominous, instilling a lot of fear in the collective, those things cannot be beat by light. And we really do need to focus on our frequency. Now, again, admittingly, I was not good at it I think it was last Wednesday. I was very emotional. Now, I did a very good job of not projecting that onto other people. What I did is I just kind of like retreated and like went within myself and like made it my own problem, which again is like also very important. So no one's perfect. We're all going to have those days where we just like feel like I got a message from a friend who was like, yeah, like that took me out yesterday. Like I was out and I'm like, yeah. And, I think sometimes if we're not aware of the collective frequency, if we're not aware of our own frequency and our own energy, then when we start to feel anxious or we start to feel fear or we start to have this like overwhelming feeling of dread or this overwhelming feeling of exhaustion, instead of just retreating and making it our own problem, we tend to like project it outward. And you see this happen all the time, right? People get angry and then they project it outward. Like watching the debate between like Trump and Kamala was that for me. Like it was just this like triggered projection off between the two candidates. And it was just so ridiculous because like one person's getting triggered and they're getting frustrated and then they're projecting that onto the other person. And then that person's getting frustrated and projecting it back onto the other person. And it's like, we're not actually getting anything done here. Like what is actually happening? And that's what happens when there's a collective trauma that everybody's kind of focused on. We tend to zoom in on it. And this is where it's so important that you are so aware of your own energy. You're so focused on your own energy because you can really take your power back and you can really put your energetic shields up. So it's empathy in that I understand what you're going through. I understand that there's a lot of fear. I understand that you already have trust issues. So whenever there's stuff like natural disasters, an election, like anything like that, anyone who has past trauma of trust issues, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being taken care of, any motherhood wounds, any sisterhood wounds, any father wounds, those things are going to come out in full force when there is a collective trauma like an election or, did the government plan a hurricane? Like all of these like things that we hear and we're like, wow, like that's great. Like I can't imagine really actually thinking that. Well, you can actually imagine thinking that if you have unhealed visibility wounds, if you have unhealed father wounds, if you have unhealed trust wounds, then anything that's a collective level energy is going to bring those things to the surface. And so this is why I always say, like, what happened to you is not your fault, but healing from it is your responsibility. Now, this is not a commentary on like, politics. This is not a commentary on like what I think about different conspiracy theories. Like that's not what this is. What this is you have to, this is a commentary on discernment. I mean, I guess everything I do is a comment on discernment, but this is where you have to really know yourself and you have to be able to tap into your own energy, because otherwise what happens is you get on TikTok and you start the doom scroll and you just scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. And the algorithm is very much like our energetic frequency where whatever you put out is what's going to be reflected back to you. So if I am a person who's like very afraid and already distrusts the government, then every single piece of social media content I get during a hurricane is going to be about how the government is modifying the weather and cloud seeding and creating the problem to kill millions of people. Like that is what I'm going to receive in my feed. And is that probably true? No, probably not. But could it be? Anything's possible. Like I don't write off anything. Like I literally am the person, I'm a Sagittarius. I'm literally the person who's like, I am going to read every single conspiracy theory you want to give me, because anything that does come true, like I'm not going to be the one who's like caught with my pants down being like, what? I had no idea. Like that is never going to be me. Now, the difference is there's a difference between like reading something and being like, oh, that's interesting. Like, oh, okay. And then letting it become your whole personality, letting it just absorb you absorb it and it just becomes part of who you are. And then that's all you can think about and that's all you can feel, right? So I already said I did a terrible job last week when that hurricane came through, and I was so emotional and I had so much anxiety all day. And what was being shared with me on my feed? It was dogs that were left by the side of the road and because people couldn't take them. It was mothers writing their children's births, like their social security number on their arms in case the flood came in and like swept their children away. It was people who were lower income and couldn't afford to get out. It was people who were just so afraid, and I was just absorbing all of it. So again, I did not do a good job last week, but I'm so aware of that, and I know what I did, and I know why I did it. And because of that, I did not project that fear onto anybody else. I did not project that fear onto my son. I did not. And what do you mean project the fear onto your son? Well, if I would have projected that, he would have come home from school and I would have had a very short fuse, and anything he did would have annoyed me and I would have gotten mad at him for no reason. Or I would have picked a fight with my wife because like fighting made me feel like more alive and less like it would have changed the feeling in my body, right? I knew that I was feeling anxiety. I knew that I was feeling emotional because I was allowing myself to absorb the fear of the people living in Florida. So I basically just like locked myself in my room and I like barely spoke the whole night because I knew that. And this is where like the collective frequency is so important. You have to understand that when you know yourself and when you develop a level of discernment that just you can literally choose for yourself what you're going to allow yourself to fall into and what you're not, what you're going to allow, what rabbit hole you're going to allow yourself to go down and which one you're not going to, regardless if it's true, you're just not going to go down that path. A really good example of this is like, also my nose is itching right now. And spiritually, if like you have an itch on your nose, it usually means that there's like spiritual energy around you. So I don't know. Maybe it's for you. Maybe there's somebody that is just letting you know that they have your back, or, you've been thinking about somebody late. If you have a lost loved one that you've been thinking about lately, like maybe they're here and they're just letting you know that they're good and they are, they're with you. Anyway, this really happened. I feel like, so like, so like a global emergency, right? Like COVID-19. Okay, when that was going on, how many people went down the craziest freaking rabbit holes? Like so deep down the rabbit hole that it literally consumed their entire personality. This is where you have to have discernment, because I, like a lot of people, read every conspiracy theory. Like, you want me to watch your crazy documentary? I'll watch it. But I have enough discernment to like know like what I'm going to allow myself to like entertain and what I'm not. And it doesn't really matter whether I believe it's true or not. It's more about, do you have the level of discernment to go, that very well could be true and that very well could have happened and that very well could be what's going on, but I'm not going to allow myself to go down that rabbit hole, because when I do that, I tend to absorb fear and anxiety that I don't want to absorb, because I am here to transmute light. I am here to move the collective forward and shift the paradigm into healing. And so do I think that there's like dark shit going on? Of course. Will I allow myself to go down that rabbit hole so deep that it consumes me? Absolutely not, because that's not what I'm here for. I'm not that person. I'm the person that's here to like shift the consciousness into an awakening, into a higher frequency of thinking. And if I allow myself to lower my frequency, then that's not going to work. So that's a really good example. And then it happens again anytime there's like a natural disaster. It happens again every time there's like an election. It happens again. There's always a rabbit hole you can go down. And I'm not saying never go down them. I'm saying be really cautious and be very aware of what you allow yourself to get swept away with, what you allow yourself to absorb, right? Because you can get to the point, like me, I got to this point where like I can read anything, and 9 times out of 10, of course, minus last Wednesday during Hurricane Milton, but I can read something and I can go, oh yeah, that would be interesting. And then like, just let it go. And like, it is what it is. And I keep living my life and I stay on the path that I'm on, which is raising the collective frequency of the planet through helping people get to know themselves really well, through breaking the matrix, essentially. And so that's like kind of my collective read. And you can see how this affects everything, right? This will affect the way you run your business. This will affect the way you interact with your kids, your partner. This will affect the way that you show up on social media. This will affect everything. And you really have to get to know yourself so well that you can detach and you can discern for yourself what you are going to allow yourself to be a part of and what you're not, and what you are going to absorb and what you're not going to absorb. So I hope that this was helpful for you. If you were feeling some type of way last week, it makes sense. A, we're in an eclipse season, so we're going to feel things heavier anyway. B, there is an election coming up in America that is really taking over a lot of people's brain space, living rent-free in people's heads. C, natural disasters are always a time where there's heightened emotions on the planet. And if you are a light worker or if you are a person who's tapped in spiritually, you are going to feel it heavier. So there's nothing wrong with you. You just, like me, maybe you needed to do a better job of putting the shields up when it was happening. And here we are. We can do that. We do that. We move forward, right? Like, we're not perfect. Everything's a journey, and we do it and we move forward. If this podcast is helpful for you and you really love it, I am really trying. I have such big, delusional dreams for this podcast. I really, really, really want this podcast to be something really, really big. And I can't do that unless it gets engagement, very similar to social media. And so if you like what you hear and this is something that you listen to, please go to Apple Podcasts and scroll to the bottom of my show, click on my show, scroll to the bottom and leave me a review, write me a review, leave me a 5-star review if you feel so inclined. That is so, so helpful for me. And no, you don't have to do that. You can listen anyway. But if you are a fan and you've been here a while, that would be something that would help me out so much, something you could do in 2 seconds that would just help me out so much. So I appreciate you. I'm with you. I hope that you are feeling a little bit lighter as we move away from the hurricane. And, who knows, at the point I'm recording this, there could be another hurricane coming, and we are inching closer to an election. So if you are still feeling heavy, just remember that you can detach, you can have the discernment, and that is up to you. Okay, my friends, I will see you next week. Love ya.